It's been 5 whole seasons since Arsenal last qualified for the Champions League. Make that 6. But that shouldn't hide the fact that Mikel Arteta's project has been on a steady upward trajectory during his 2 years in charge, taking the Gunners from back-to-back 8th place league finishes to challenging for top 4 in 2021-22. From the start, Arteta has been laying the building blocks of his Guardiola-inspired football, powered by what was the youngest Premier League squad last season and the second youngest Arsenal team ever. But behind the scenes is another man overseeing Arsenal's revival as the club's technical director. That man is Edu Gaspar. Since we're now accustomed to seeing him in a suit, it's easy to overlook the fact that he was part of the legendary Invincibles Arsenal team that went an entire season unbeaten in 2004-05, as well as an advisor for the Brazil national team in 2019. On the back of those successes, it becomes more apparent why he has the heart for Arsenal's project and the desire to return the club to prominence by turning their squad around one season at a time in what he's described as a 5-year plan before Arsenal can challenge the elite. How have Arsenal gone from mediocrity to back to challenging for the Premier League's top 4 under Arteta and Edu? Let's discuss this and more in today's video. Arsenal's current strategy kick-started when they decided to replace Unai Emery with Mikel Arteta in November 2019. The idea behind the change was to introduce a coach with a well-fleshed-out plan of how the team should play. Under Emery, Arsenal were a muddled team with a confusing identity, and it was often difficult to read his system and team characteristics, which made the job of Arsenal's board all the more difficult when it came to recruiting the right players. In hindsight, Edu considered the mid-season managerial change fairly urgent. It was uncharacteristic of Arsenal, but a necessary and brave decision on Edu's part, especially considering he was just hired as the team's first ever technical director a few months prior. In stepped Arteta, who quickly convinced the board of his credibility and laid out the game plan, play style, players, and technical attributes for how he wanted to play, which again has helped the board make better decisions. Since then, Arteta has received significant financial backing and considerable patience. His contract renewal this May, one that was heavily influenced by Edu, was also a clear sign of Arsenal's faith in him and their ambition to be perceived as an organized, well-run club. Doing so also helps erase doubts that might linger in the minds of players they wish to sign. Would the likes of Gabriel Jesus or Zinchenko have joined if a manager was not tied down? Probably not. Edu's squad building strategy is not purely his own, but a process that he openly shares with the executive team, the board, and most importantly, Arteta. So far, the pair have done a stellar job at strengthening the squad while making it younger and more motivated to play for the badge. But that begs the question, if Edu hatched a plan to rejuvenate the squad, why did Arsenal later sign veterans like David Luiz and Willian, players whose merits at the club are highly debatable? Well, in any process, mistakes will be made. That's how transfers are in the real world. You can have seemingly sound logic behind the deal, yet it can still go awry. David Luiz and Willian were the experienced players who, at the time, were considered the short-term solutions to help Arsenal bridge the quality gap during the first couple of years of their rebuild.
Stop the cap!
Judging by their dismal stints at the Emirates, perhaps Arsenal did not choose the right ones. Recently, however, all transfers have been highly intentional and well backed with extensive background checks. On top of missing out on European football for several seasons, the financial impact of the pandemic meant Arsenal have had to forcibly rebalance their books and shed some of the big earners in recent years. Edu has overseen a huge turnover in the squad since taking over as technical director. Even if you discount his first summer of 2019, in which he was largely acclimatizing to the job, 16 players have left the club permanently on his watch. Now boasting a more streamlined squad, the team is performing much more as a unit. Of course, freeing up the salary budget also leaves room for the contract renewals of players playing a critical role in the Arsenal rebuild. But it's not just about cost cutting, as Edu has even admitted to making strategic decisions to let problem players leave, even if it meant the club taking a financial hit. It's a scenario that he doesn't want in the squad, one in which even the players have more influence than the staff. Case in point, Aubameyang left for Barcelona on a free transfer earlier this year, after a breach in discipline that saw him stripped of the captaincy. Here's what Edu had to say about this strategy. "I know it hurts. I know it's strange when I go to the board and say, sometimes it's better to pay a player to leave than maintain them, but I consider it an investment." Edu deserves a ton of credit for his stance, as not many technical directors display his commitment to making difficult but correct decisions for a club, especially if those decisions attract criticism and naturally don't come with immediate positive results. Of course, continuing to allow players to leave for free or even paying them to leave by terminating the contracts is not sustainable, nor does it help Arsenal extract maximum value from selling players either. Based on the last 3 seasons, Arsenal have largely overpaid for incoming transfers, while giving away players for free or pocket change. But Edu believes Arsenal are close to breaking that cycle, and it's clear he knows the kind of player mentality required in a successful dressing room. As early as December 2020, it was reported that Edu believed the Arsenal squad would only be truly competitive in time for the 2022-23 campaign, even admitting that qualifying for the Champions League last season would have put the club a year ahead of schedule. We are presumably in year 3 of Edu's 5-year plan. That makes it clear the aim for 2022-23 is to return to Europe's elite competition, be that via the top 4 or winning the Europa League. How much credit do you think Edu deserves for Arsenal's revival? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.